Hello, I'm Jörg and Dennis from Scene World, and we have the pleasure today to interview David Pleasance, who had many hats at Commodore, and his friend Nico Barbat, who we will address later. And we will talk a bit about the history of David, what he's known for, and what he's doing currently, as you can see here on the table. So David, you actually started out early on at Commodore. That was a very known company, especially for producing the Commodore 64, the most sold home computer ever. And you started out in marketing, I guess. So tell us a bit about your beginnings at Commodore.
Is that on? Yes, it is. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to this little presentation. Yes, I had the very good fortune of joining Commodore. I joined Commodore in the UK in June of 1983, and they had just in the previous October launched the Commodore 64. So for me, it was the perfect time to join the company. I actually joined them as a salesman, and my role was to sell Commodore PETs, the early business machines before PCs. My role was to sell them into the retail market. And quite strangely, after a few weeks, Commodore announced that they were actually going to be dropping the Commodore PET line and bringing out new products. So in a way, I was recruited for no reason. But luckily for me, because the 64 was doing so well, I was then given the responsibility to look after all the national accounts. That's the big retail stores within the UK, and selling to them and making sure that we did lots of business. As time progressed, I managed to introduce some different marketing ploys to Commodore. And the bottom line is that we ended up selling loads and loads and loads of 64s into every possible retail situation, including bookstores and chemist stores everywhere. Then we launched the Amiga 500 product, which obviously revolutionized the whole world of computing. And I guess in a way that's really how I made my reputation, because when we launched the Amiga 500, I don't know if you realize how difficult it is to market something which essentially is a piece of plastic with some keys on it. Oh, do you want to translate? I forgot. Do you need to translate? I forgot.
Well, was gerade gesagt hat, war, dass praktisch bekannt ist dafür, dass das Marketing für Commodore-Computer gemacht hat und vor allem Marketingkampagnen später für den Amiga. Und hat das durch Paketierungen von Spielen und Produkten gemacht, zusammen mit dem Amiga.
Sorry, I should have got him to translate earlier. I apologize. I forget not everybody speaks English, so I am sorry. Anyway, what happened with the Amiga 500 was that, as I was saying, it's a piece of plastic with some keys on it, and that is a very difficult thing to market in any exciting way. So I came up with the idea of putting the computer into a bundle with all sorts of software, the latest and greatest games, obviously, because that's what the people wanted, but also making sure we always had good productivity software in there as well. Such as art packages and word processing and stuff like that. And the reason for doing that is that the parents can justify the purchase of the machine.
Also hat gesagt, dass vor allem wichtig war, dass auch Schreibprogramme und produktive Programme mit enthalten waren, damit es Kaufgründe gab für die Eltern zum Beispiel und für die Kundschaft dann die Computer auch zu kaufen, in dem Fall speziell der Amiga 500.
So the first one that we ever did, I went to Ocean Software, who had just come back from Hollywood, and they had just paid $1 million just for the rights to use the name of Batman the movie, which was a movie going into production at that time and expected to be ready in about a year and a half.
Vor allem bekannt war das Bundle mit Batman, für das er bei Ocean Software 1 Million US-Dollar bezahlt hat.
So anyway, I negotiated a deal with them, but obviously this was a completely new idea. So I committed to only 10,000 pieces. But what I promised them was that we would do a pack that actually reflected their marketing of the Batman game. And the fact that there was an Amiga inside was almost incidental.
Ja, hat hier in dem Fall praktisch bahnbrechende Neuigkeit gemacht. Hat praktisch versprochen, dass 10.000 Exemplare von diesem Bundle verkauft werden.
Now, Ocean were very worried because they just paid out $1 million and they anticipated it was going to cost them another $1 million to make the game. So their concerns were that they knew how many they needed to sell in order to get their money back, and they were obviously they wanted to sell more than that, and they were worried that my activity would influence those volumes.
Ja, und Ocean hatte da Angst, weil sie brauchten noch 1 Million US-Dollar, um das Spiel zu produzieren, zu finanzieren, dass sich das nicht mehr refinanziert, wenn nur 10.000 Exemplare von diesem Bundle verkauft werden und sie dadurch praktisch den eigenen Markt kannibalisieren würden.
And as it happens, they sold 5 times their very highest estimate. So for them, it was a huge success for their own product. But more importantly, I did not take 10,000 pieces from them. I ended up taking 186,000 pieces because that is how many Amiga 500 Batman packs we sold in 12 weeks.
Was noch wichtig war zu erwähnen, hat sogar die Erwartungen übertroffen, weil im Schluss wurden 186 Exemplare 100.086 Exemplare von dem Bundle verkauft.
Anyway, after Commodore UK, I was promoted to General Manager of Commodore Electronics Limited, which was the holding company for the whole group of Commodore, and that was based in Basel, Switzerland, and I was responsible for 35 countries.
Und dann wurde er befördert zum Geschäftsführer von Commodore UK und von der ganzen Group, die da in Basel in der Schweiz beheimatet war.
And I was there for 2 years, and then I moved to America. I was promoted to Vice President of Commodore Inc., which was the sales company in America, and I was there for a year.
Das machte er für 2 Jahre und dann ging er in die USA und war Vizepräsident für die USA für ein weiteres Jahr.
And then ultimately I was returned back to the UK as managing director of the company where I first started.
Und dann ging er wieder zurück in Großbritannien, wo das alles angefangen hat.
Now those were very difficult times for Commodore because they were in their most serious financial trouble that they'd ever been in. And one of the things, we launched the Amiga 1200 at that time.
Und Commodore war da schon sehr stark in finanzielle Schwierigkeiten.
And then, unfortunately, my boss, the president of Commodore, insisted that we launch the Amiga CD32 about 7 or 8 months ahead of its scheduled launch date.
Und dann war das Problem, dass sein Boss darauf bestanden hat, den CD32 vor dem eigentlichen Release-Date auf den Markt zu bringen. Und wie wir ja alle wissen, war das nicht sehr erfolgreich. Und das hat praktisch dazu beigetragen, dass Commodore bankrott gegangen ist schlussendlich.
I was totally against this because, first of all, I knew that we had no software ready for it. I had got development kits into all the major game software publishers in the UK and a couple in Europe, and they were developing software specifically to utilize all the extra features and benefits that the CD32 had to offer.
Ja, also David war dagegen, den CD32 so früh auf den Markt zu bringen, weil halt noch Software dafür entwickelt werden sollte, die die speziellen Feature vom Amiga CD32 unterstützen würden. Also das heißt praktisch, die Markteinführung ist auch an der fehlenden Software gescheitert.
So the fact that we had no proper software for it when we launched was always going to be a negative, because all that the software publishers did was to port their existing Amiga software and put it onto the CD32, which really was of no benefit. And obviously the clients didn't like that. But the other thing that I knew was going to be a negative was that we had got all our Amiga 1200s that were being manufactured. They were already pre-sold into the market, ready for Christmas. And I knew that launching the CD32 at the same time would impact those numbers, and it did. We sold a lot less 1200s than we had already got ordered.
Das verursacht natürlich zwei Probleme, also die frühe Einführung von Amiga 32. Das erste Problem, viele Publisher haben einfach die Amiga-Releases schlecht portiert auf den Amiga CD32. Und das zweite Problem war, zum selben Zeitpunkt wurde auch der Amiga 400 eingeführt, sodass sich praktisch dann der Amiga CD32 halt im Hintertreffen befand durch diese schlechte bzw. zeitgleiche Markteinführung.
So the net result, of course, was that ultimately, no matter what we did, we couldn't save Commodore. They were in too much financial trouble, and they declared bankruptcy.
Leider konnte man Commodore nicht mehr retten und wurde dann halt bankrott.
Now, Commodore UK was the strongest Commodore subsidiary, and closely followed by Germany. Commodore Germany was just behind us in volume and turnover. But the Commodore UK, we managed to stay trading for 14 months after Commodore parent company went bankrupt.
Von den ganzen Commodore-Schwestergesellschaften war die UK-Gesellschaft am finanzstärksten direkt vor Commodore Deutschland.
Anyway, I and my fellow managing director at Commodore UK, a guy called Colin Proudfoot, he and we tried to buy the worldwide assets of Commodore. And it's a long story which I won't bore you with, but the net result is that we got cheated out of it, and Escom bought Commodore.
Ja, er und sein Kollege Colin versuchten dann, die Anteile zu verkaufen, gingen aber schlussendlich dann an Escom in Deutschland.
And as you all know, just over a year after, they bought Commodore, Escom themselves went bankrupt. So it was a very bad purchase on Commodore's behalf.
I think that was in 95, right? Ja. So 1995 wurde praktisch Commodore an Escom verkauft und ein Jahr später, 1996, ging dann Escom selber pleite, wie vielleicht einige von Ihnen wissen.
Anyway, that's my background with Commodore. So I was with them 12 and a half years, right until the very end. Certainly, I think I'm probably one of the longest serving employees that Commodore had. And I have to say, even though it was very difficult working for management who didn't really understand the business, I loved it and I could not wait to get to work every day. It was just a fantastic job.
Er muss gestehen, obwohl es sehr schwierig war, weil das Management keine Ahnung vom Computerbusiness hatte, liebte er die Arbeit für Commodore.
Anyway, after that, I got out of the industry completely. I changed my life completely. I remarried, I moved abroad, different countries and so on. And then in 2015, I was invited to be a guest speaker at the very first ever Amiga reunion, which was held in Amsterdam, the Amiga 30, that was in 2015. And I was amazed to walk into that place and be swamped by people who come up and wanted to shake my hand and wanted a signature and a photograph. And I was completely blown away because it was a real shock to me after so many years.
Und im Jahr 2015 war er dann in Holland eingeladen für die erste für das erste Amiga-Meeting und er war erstaunt zu sehen, dass es noch so eine aktive Community für den Amiga gibt.
Anyway, in 2019, after being at many events and doing speeches and so on, I was persuaded to write my story about Commodore, which, to be honest with you, I was very reluctant to do because I don't consider myself to be an author.
Und 2019 wurde er mehrfach gebeten, seine Geschichte mal in Buchform festzuhalten, wie man hier zum Beispiel sieht. Ja? Und das, denke ich, wird der nächste Teil des Interviews sein. I think the next part of the interview will be talking about the books, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And that is also where Nico Barbat will come into play, because he's a publisher for books, actually.
Yes, just to explain that when this was released, which was actually in 2019, was the first time this was released. And what this book covers, it covers the whole of that time from 83 right through to the end. And there are chapters in here from many other people from within Commodore. This is definitely an inside story. It's not conjecture. For example, there is a chapter by Dave Haney, one of the engineers. There's a chapter by R.J. Michael, who was one of the designers of the Amiga 500. And also from Germany, Dr. Peter Kittel has a chapter. Some of you who know Commodore Germany probably know him.
In dem Buch wird die Zeit beschrieben von 1983 vorwärts. Und es sind auch andere Geschichten von anderen Leuten drin, unter anderem Dave Haney, der den Amiga mitdesignt hat mit R.J. Michael und auch unter anderem den deutschen Commodore-Mitarbeiter Dr. Peter Kittel.
So, anyway, we released this, we only released it only in English initially, and it sold very, very well. It is, even if I say so myself, it's a very interesting story because you won't believe some of the mistakes and opportunities that were lost by the management of Commodore. In fact, this book is being used in many universities now as an example of how not to run a business.
Und das Buch Commodore The Inside Story war sehr erfolgreich in Englisch und wurde dann auch in Deutsch übersetzt. Ja? Und da kommt Nico ins Spiel. Perhaps Nico, introduce yourself a bit about who you are and how you are involved.
Ja, hallo zusammen. Ich mache die Geschichte ganz kurz, weil jemand anders im Mittelpunkt steht. David ist die Hauptperson hier, ich bin nur dabei. Ich bin Amiga-Journalist oder Technikjournalist seit 25 Jahren, also eigentlich zu der Zeit eingestiegen, als David aufgehört hat. So zur Zeit, als Estom Amiga gekauft hat, bin ich Journalist geworden, professionell. War eine Zeit lang Amiga Plus Chefredakteur, 5 Jahre lang. Das hat auch riesig Spaß gemacht, auch als die Zeiten nicht mehr so schön waren. Bin dann zu Burda, zu Bauer, bei verschiedenen größeren Verlagen und bin seit 3 Jahren wieder so ein bisschen zurück in der Szene, weil Amiga hat immer mein Herz für geschlagen und es ist wie bei euch, die hier sitzt, die das interessiert, ist das einfach ein cooles System gewesen und wir sehen gerade, es passiert so viel in der Szene, was neue Hardware angeht, neue Softwareentwicklungen und es ist richtig Leben drin, es macht total Spaß, das zu sehen, dass hier richtig was abgeht. Genau, letztes Jahr habe ich mit einem Freund zusammen, den ich auch schon seit Ewigkeiten kenne, über die Amiga Plus, ein alter Kollege, habe ich einen kleinen Verlag gegründet, aus dem Grund, weil es im Bereich Videospielkultur und Technik in Deutschland nur einen anderen Verlag gab, der sich auf diese Themen konzentriert hat, mit dem wir auch eng zusammenarbeiten, sehr befreundet sind, mit dem wir auch einen gemeinsamen Stand drüben haben. Und wir haben unser kleines Verlagsprogramm aufgebaut. Wir haben erst ein Buch zu Monkey Island gemacht, dann zu Valhalla ein Artbook zusammen mit Ubisoft entwickelt. Und jetzt kommen 2 Bücher von David Pleasance dazu, die wir jetzt auf den deutschen Markt rausgebracht haben, einfach um unsere Idee war, David zu helfen, in den Handel reinzukommen mit den Büchern. Also wenn ihr das Buch kaufen wollt, ihr kriegt das überall bei Amiga-Händlern, bei Amazon, bei uns natürlich auch. hier am Stand, wenn ihr das kaufen möchtet. Ich freue mich auch super, wenn ihr zu uns kommt, einfach mit uns sprecht, weil Austausch ist das Beste, was uns passieren kann in der Community.
Wichtig zu erwähnen, dein Stand heißt Look Behind You, damit sie dich finden.
Genau.
I would say now let's talk a bit about some stories of the book, some teasers perhaps.
Yeah, but we got enough time because I've got a lot to talk about with the new series of books. So, up to you. Yes, I mean, this for example, I'll give you one example of an opportunity that Commodore had that they blew. I was asked by the guys at Psygnosis. You probably know that name, a very, very highly regarded a publisher of software games, and they asked me to take my boss, Mehdi Ali, up to them. They wanted to talk to him. I didn't know what they wanted to say, but I took him up there.
Eine der Stories zum Beispiel ist, wo Psygnosis, die eine sehr bekannte Softwarefirma ist, hat unter anderem auch Lemmings gemacht, mit seinem Chef Mehdi Ali sprechen wollte und David nicht genau wusste damals, was die eigentlich von ihm wollen.
So when we arrived, Ian Hetherington, who was one of the co-directors, he was the technical guy at Psygnosis, and he started to, remember I've already given these guys development machines so that they could make software for the CD32.
Zum Beispiel haben die dann...
Ian Hetherington.
Pardon?
Ian Hetherington, his name, yeah.
Zum Beispiel beschreibt es auch die Story, wie Psygnosis Development Kits an die Entwickler weitergegeben haben, damit die praktisch Software für Commodore entwickeln können.
So Ian started to tell Mehdi, he said, look Mehdi, I've looked at this technology, he said, and I've realized that if you make this little change and you add that and you do this and you do this, you will end up with a much, much better product.
Psygnosis hat praktisch Mehdi Ali Tipps gegeben, wie sie den Amiga verbessern könnten, damit er ein besseres Produkt wird.
Now, obviously, Mehdi Ali was not a technical person, and most people would say, look, this sounds really interesting, but I'm not the right person to talk to. How about I get Dave Haney or one of our engineers to contact you and you give them information? That would be fantastic.
Normalerweise würde man natürlich sagen, als Geschäftsführer, ich habe von der Technik keine Ahnung, frag einen Entwickler wie zum Beispiel Dave Haney, der ja den Amiga mitentwickelt hat. Aber das ist scheinbar nicht geschehen.
But Mehdi Ali was, well, the only word I can think of, he was an imbecile. And he thought he was being talked down to, and he got very angry. I had to drag him away.
Und Mehdi Ali war bekannt, dass er halt sehr also Mehdi Ali war bekannt dafür, dass er sehr impulsiv ist.
Now the reason I'm telling you this is because not long after that, Psygnosis got bought by Sony, and not long after that, Ian Hetherington himself was made head of Sony PlayStation Europe. He was offering us the technology that PlayStation ultimately used, and because of Mehdi Ali's ignorance, we missed out on it. We just walked away from it.
I didn't quite get that.
He offered us that technology that went into PlayStation, and because Mehdi, the way he was, I took him away from it. We lost that opportunity. It was being offered to us for free.
Ah, exactly. Okay. Also durch die Impulsität von Mehdi Ali hat er praktisch eine Möglichkeit verloren, mit Psygnosis zusammenzuarbeiten, und stattdessen, wie vielleicht einige wissen, ging der Deal dann an Sony für die PlayStation.
Okay, now the real reason I'm here is because we were asked so many times, would we do a German translation of the book? Because not everybody can read English, of course. And so in 2021, I ran a Kickstarter inviting people to back us doing the German book. At the same time, by coincidence, I was convinced to do another book, which is this one here, which I'll come on to in a moment. But I did Kickstarters to both of them, And then later on, that following year, I was quite ill, and I was in hospital, and I ended up losing about 3 months of productivity, which meant I missed the printing deadline for 2022, and so therefore these books have only just come out. This one came out in German. It's only been about 3 or 4 weeks. We actually had this book here.
Ja, also der David hatte Kickstarter laufen lassen für das deutsche Buch Commodore The Inside Story German Edition und für die darauffolgenden Bücher, aber hat leider die Druck-Deadline verpasst und deswegen kamen die Bücher erst jetzt auf den Markt.
Now this book, this arrived earlier than that one, and I shipped them all from the UK, and it was an absolute nightmare because the UK is no longer in EU.
Zum Beispiel war das Verschicken von dem Buch Vultures, Vampires ein Drama, weil wir einige wissen, durch den Brexit gab es Probleme beim Versand des Buches nach Europa.
Now, what this book is, the title of this book is Vultures, From Vultures to Vampires. And what it is, this is a book that covers all of the things that happened to Commodore's patents, logos, IPs and trademarks after ESCOM. Because there were vultures all coming in trying to get a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
So, das Buch From Vultures to Vampires konzentriert sich vor allem auf alle anderen Aspekte von Commodore, die Logos, die Medienassets und so weiter.
And the reason we called it From Vultures to Vampires was because at that time the very latest technology was the vampire coming from the Apollo guys. So it was a perfect title, and the idea was it would be one book that covered the whole of that time.
Ja, also das Timing war perfekt, weil zu dem Zeitpunkt war der Amiga, die Vampire Edition, State of the Art, und eigentlich sollte nur ein Buch erscheinen, aber schlussendlich gab es so viele Stories, dass from Vultures to Vampires in 3 Bände umgesetzt worden ist, um alle Stories abzudecken.
So then what happened was that we realized that we'd filled this much of the book, and we'd only covered the time from 95 to 2004.
Und dann haben wir festgestellt, dass wir eigentlich nur in dem zweiten Buch von 95 bis 2004...
To 2004. Yeah.
Ja, von 2004 abgedeckt haben.
Yeah. So we were forced then into writing Volume 2. Now, Volume 2 was coming out at the same time as this one, but when we reached 550 pages on Volume 2, we realized we needed a Volume 3 as well.
Und dann hat er angefangen, einen dritten Teil zu machen, was praktisch alles abdeckt von 2004 bis heutzutage.
Now that brings me very nicely back to Nico, because after us trying to ship these, I decided I need somebody already in Europe to do all the distribution outside of the UK, and that's how I contacted Nico.
Ja, und das bringt ihn wieder zum Nico Barbat, weil dann hat er sich überlegt, warum nicht die Nico bitten, ihm zu helfen. Dann kann er das direkt von Deutschland aus innerhalb der EU verschicken und hat nicht die ganzen nicht-europäischen oder außer EU-mäßigen Einfuhrumsatzsteuerprobleme.
So this German version was ready to be printed, and so was this ready to be printed. So we actually jointly published them. It made perfect sense to do that, and I'm really pleased because I've got a partner in Nico and his company. They're absolutely fantastic, very ethical people. They do a great job, and I'm thrilled to bits that I've got a partner in Germany that works with us.
Ja, und er meint, dass jetzt das deutsche Buch von Commodore The Inside Story und From Vultures to Vampires gerade jetzt in der Druckvorbereitung ist, und er ist sehr zufrieden mit der Leistung und mit dem Business von Nico Barbat. Aber sag mal selber was dazu, Nico.
Also das deutsche Buch, das ist erhältlich, das könnt ihr kaufen. Der zweite Teil ist auch erhältlich, der dritte Teil kommt jetzt. So, also es ist schon da. Es ist noch nicht mehr im Druck, sondern schon da.
Now, just to update you, Volume 3 is actually printed and it's literally on its way to us. I should take bulk delivery of it end of September. I'm pretty certain it'll be. He'll probably get it a few days before me. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that all of these books are available through Nico in Germany and other parts of Europe and the rest of the world. He ships everywhere outside of the UK because it makes perfect sense to do that. These books, this one as the German version, we do have an English version. I don't have it here with me, but you can order it through us. And please come and get one of these, which will give you details about the reaches. This book has also been translated and published in Italian. It is currently being translated in Polish.
Also David sagt noch, dass er erwartet, dass der dritte Teil von dem Buch wahrscheinlich im Ende September erscheint und dass das erste Buch Commodore The Inside Story momentan auch in Italienisch und Polnisch übersetzt wird.
Now, as far as these are concerned, they're only in English. But if the demand is there and people want them translated, of course we can do that.
Und er meint, falls für die anderen Bücher Bedarf besteht, könnte man die vielleicht in Zukunft auch auf Deutsch übersetzen oder andere Sprachen.
So our stand is very close by, about less than 1 minute's walk. If you'd like to buy something, I'll happily sign it for you. If you'd like to bring anything Commodore, Amiga related, I'll sign it for you. And I'll be very happy to have a chat with you personally anyway.
Ja, also wie gesagt, die Bücher können beim Look Behind You Booth vom Nico und vom David gekauft werden. Und der David würde die auch signieren und auch andere Gegenstände von Commodore signieren, wenn der Bedarf da ist.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
I think that would be all. Are there any questions, perhaps?
Yep.
Hi, I want to say thank you for your important contribution to the tech world and also now your important contribution to preserving its history. So thank you for the books. I am curious, when Commodore was at its highest, or maybe also before its bankruptcy, was there any long-term vision of where Commodore would have been in the future, and where do you think Commodore would have been today if it was still around?
Well, to be honest with you, I realized very, very quickly when I joined Commodore in June of '83, as I told you, I was recruited to sell pets to the retail market. But I realized that after a couple of months that when they told me that they weren't going to have any pets, Commodore never, ever, ever had any kind of business plan.
Anybody else or no questions? No? Okay, well, then thanks for your attention and listening to it. And enjoy further the weekend at Gamescom.
Dankeschön, Samstag euch.
Thank you so very much, everybody. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Please come and talk to me. I don't bite unless you ask me to.